Station 51, engine 27, engine 32, truck 105.
You're listening to The Fire Break with Steve Wolf.
Welcome back to The Fire Break. I'm Steve Wolf. As you know, The Fire Break is sponsored by Team Wildfire, developing innovative technology for fire suppression and control. Hey, what a mouthful that is. But I got it out, These new teeth are really helping out. I have got with us today a guy with more experience in wildfire management, incident management than I could imagine. This guy has worked for every major agency. He's worked with the forest agencies, worked with the feds, he's worked with states. David Dukart, welcome to The Fire Break. How are you today?
Great. Thanks for having me, Steve.
Absolutely. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yes, Dukart.
Look at that. 2 for 2 today. I'm going to quit right now while I'm ahead. Dave, tell us a little bit about your career, how you got into firefighting and where it's taken you.
So how I got into it was I was graduating high school and had a scholarship to go play football. And one of my dad's good friends, my dad was in the military for 24 years. And so one of his friends was, back then we called them AFMOs, Assistant Fire Management Officer, for the BLM in my hometown in eastern Montana. And so they had, Montana gets pretty cold, so we had some firewood. So, of course, they had a log splitter. They went in together and split. And so I'm the one that's, they're talking and I'm loading the wood, hitting the lever, and then putting it in the truck. And so he asked me, he said, what was my plans for the summer? And I was like, well, I'd probably, do some stuff to keep in shape for football. And at that time I was working for a gentleman, just mowing lawns, raking leaves, doing, manual labor type stuff. And he's like, hey, have you ever thought about doing this firefighting, this wildland firefighting? And I'm like, no, never heard of it. And so back then in the 90s, you just go down to the local job center and put in an application. And being Miles City is a pretty small town, pretty much everyone knew who I was. A lot of it was because of my dad, but, playing sports and everything in the community, they knew who I was. And so they took a chance on me. And then in 2000, I was lucky and made it a permanent position,
Okay. And then what agencies have you progressed through?
Okay, so I spent most of my career with the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management. And then in 2009, I moved to New Mexico and a little part of Arizona and worked for the National Park Service. We had 5 units there that I did fire management and fuels management for. And then in 2013, I moved to California here, working for the Los Padres National Forest. And that's when I joined the U.S. Forest Service. And then I stayed here in California the last 4 years of my career. I was actually remote, working for the Eastern area region, which was our regional office was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but I stayed remote here in California.
Okay. And what did you learn during your time with the different agencies? How are they different from each other?
Well, it's interesting. So they're all land management agencies, right? And the one thing is I like to say the BLM and the Park Service, they're probably on the different ends of the spectrum. National Park Service was definitely about, coming from the Organic Act and a little bit of how it was created. It was about preservation and protection of everything. I always say, like, to the fine tooth piece of grain of sand, they wanted to protect that as in where it was originally when that became a park. Where the BLM and the Forest Service is kind of in the middle. The BLM was more about multi-use, multiple, coming from the Homesteaders Act and stuff. That's where the BLM was kind of created. You have a lot of grazing, you have a lot of recreation, you have a lot of multi-use stuff going on. And it just depends on where, especially in the Western United States, Nevada and everything and then the Forest Service kind of in the middle there, right? Is especially in the 50s, 60s, 70s, when it was about harvesting, about the cutting of timber and everything. Now it's kind of moved back more into, it still does, has some grazing rights and stuff, has some natural resource type stuff, but then it's also a big recreational area. We have some great wildernesses that are national forests, especially in California here. And so it's a little of everything, and that's probably the biggest thing is. And then they all are trying to do what they deem is correct for the land, so that it's here for the future. And under Wildfire, it was always a little different. There were some perceptions of what the Wilderness Act was and what we could use, whether that was being able to use helicopters to, using crosscut saws or whatever. And so that's kind of some of the differences. Some of it is also the leadership. The Forest Service is definitely a lot bigger than the Department of Interior agencies, the BLM and everything. And so that's probably one thing, me spending almost 20 years with the BLM. My title was this, but I did so much other things. I got to do a lot of stuff. I never thought I'd be a general blaster and do blasting as a firefighter and doing fire line explosives and other stuff. It's just a lot of really neat stuff that kept me with the federal government.
Yeah, I bet dynamite's an easier way to cut line, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, especially you get out there in the wilderness and everything, and the Forest Service is still using it. The Missoula smoke jumpers are one of the blasting crews that we still use, especially up in Alaska and stuff. And so, and it started being used also for dropping trees. So that's probably one of our biggest hazards is trees falling on people.
Yeah.
And our firefighters. And so being able to use fire line explosives to drop trees. And now the remote is, you can be away from the remote about 5 miles from where the blast zone is.
Yeah.
So it really is a great tool, just, like some of the other technology that's coming around.
Yeah. Anfo's a powerful tree remover, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
That's great. So you've been in the fire business for 25 plus years. It seems that the nature of fire has changed quite a bit in the last 2 decades. What are you seeing, and why do you think it's changing?
Well, I think it's just kind of like the United States a little bit. Is the demographics have changed a lot. Definitely, I look at the last 20 years. What was urban interface has changed. I mean, now that is. I mean, we just saw in January, right? Los Angeles. I mean, unless you live in California, you know a little bit that most of the cities are ingrained in the urban interface, but that wouldn't have been considered wooey. 15, 20 years ago, that would have been considered urban and the city, and fire shouldn't really be throwing through there as much as it does. But when you have the Santa Anas, I mean, everything's off the table. That's probably one of the big things. The other thing that I know through my career, especially on the federal side, it's an ebb and flow of Congress and the president. So, whether it's budgets and everything, that's always one of the dynamics that's changing a little bit. I know this week they just announced that the Secretary of Agriculture and Secretary of Interior looks like they're going to become a fire department under the Department of Interior. So that's pretty big news. That's a change. The last 5 years, we had they created now a wildfire for the federal agencies. They created a wildfire organization or a job series where under Department of Labor, we've had some significant deaths in my career. And under Department of Labor, until just recently, wildland fire wasn't a job series. We were forestry technicians or range technicians. And so our fatalities count wasn't going, to anything to where people didn't really, unless you were in the agency or the job, you didn't really understand that we do a pretty dangerous job and people are dying, and some of those are, really should have never happened.
Yeah.
So I see a lot of, finally we have some of our legislation that are truly looking at the best. One of the big things was, especially after 9/11, I had some friends and stuff that were went to the towers and everything. And, you know, it's not just in structure fires, the carcinogens and the bad stuff that we take in. Luckily they're able to wear SCBAs and use air, where as a wildland firefighter, you're out there for 16 plus hours. You're usually, 3 to 5 miles away from your truck. And so having to carry 15 minutes of air is not going to do you well. And so putting a handkerchief on doesn't really, protect your lungs. And so, just some of that stuff of, now we have, which I'm registered with. Luckily, I haven't had too many health conditions and stuff that's based off of the job, but you never know when that's going to happen and stuff. And so, luckily we have a group that's looking at it, especially on the Department of Labor stuff, to where trying to look at the science and truly, is that smoke as healthy or as bad as we think it is?
Probably worse, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Especially when you're, and I look at, I got into prescribed fire and trying to do, trying to treat the lands so that they can stay healthy. But honestly, when it first started in the early 2000s, prescribed fire was a way of trying to make an area more, I don't want to, I guess safe is the word I'm using, but make an area that's a little better for firefighters to go in there and be able to do their job, and, making it a ground fire instead of a crown fire. And that, was something that, and so now I started, instead of like a wildfire, you get there, usually the combustion and the part of it that has the heavy smoke has already been going. But on prescribed fire, you're there, you're lighting the match. So you're there from when it's starting to warm up and combust and doing all that smoke. And I probably ate the heaviest smoke loads during prescribed fires, but I saw a passion for it. I saw a value in it. So that's why I maintained it for 15 plus years of my career.
It was a long time.
Yeah.
So tell me about the agencies. Do what's going on in the upper levels of the agency impact boots on the ground strategies?
It does, to a point. I mean, luckily our incident management teams are trying to, I would say that's that one group that is tries to deflect what the boots on the ground are doing. They try and take all that information in. I think a lot of it is technology. Technology is positive for us, but also it can be, it can dampen and it can hinder us a little bit. And so that's always been the biggest thing, is just trying to get away or get around the opinion side of it and what is truly reality. Sometimes we'll have someone that comes in, or will be pushed to, hey, we need to go in there and do something that probably isn't safe. Especially you get the hot shots and those groups in there. They're willing to do a lot of things that many firefighters won't. But when they say no, people need to really truly look at that, because they are our elite force, especially for the large campaign fires. They have the experience, they have the technology, they have all that wealth of knowledge. And if they're saying, hey, we can't do it that way, but we can do it this way, we need to be looking at that. And so, yeah, it's just like anything. Political, we're asked to do some stuff that probably we wouldn't do traditionally. But that, on the same side, sometimes it's good too. It when you're under the fingernail of everyone, I think it makes you truly, and that's why I think we've had some new, I guess, standards. Risk assessments is truly where when I first started, it was all job hazards analysis, and honestly, that was, you identified what the hazards were, but you didn't really mitigate or show ways to reduce that hazard or make yourself more aware of it. And so it was kind of more of a just a check in the box, hey, we're being safe type thing.
Yeah.
And now truly using risk assessments and truly analyzing, like, okay, here is truly what the risk is, and here's what we can control, and mitigate, and here's what we can't, and and truly using that as more of a educated guess instead of just throwing darts at the dartboard.
Yeah. Do you think technology is going to be able to replace some of the most dangerous aspects of the job?
Well, I mean, you can see it in the UAS and the drone stuff, right? Is so, I mean, when I first started, we'd use a Type 3 helicopter to do plastic sphere, the little ping pong balls,
Yeah.
and being able to drop them and doing, and now we're using the drones to do that. They got cameras on them, so you can literally fly the drone and see live footage. Your incident commander, your operations section can see that live footage of truly what's happening there and make really. So I just look at that. I mean, um, BurnBot is a company that's here in California. I think you've posted some of their posts and stuff.
Yeah.
I look at that system there of, okay, here's something that's remote controlled. It's putting down a barrier, a fire line, and it's also spraying it out. So the the growth outside of that machine, the width outside of that is very minimal, and it works great in the 1 hour, 2 hour fuels, the grasses and a little bit of the brushes. And so just, trying to use we got some great people, some very smart people that, and I think the hardest thing is, and I'm hoping maybe that's with this combining all the federal agencies into one agency. Maybe we can, human nature is we always want to go back to what we know, right? And so
Sure.
change is always our hardest thing. But I think finally we got some leadership in there that truly understand that, hey, just because that's where we came from doesn't mean that's how we have to continue doing business. And we truly do need to look at, it doesn't always have to be a human being out there, suppressing the fire.
Right. Just like we're not sending humans to Mars.
Exactly.
Kind of dangerous, right?
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
yet. Okay. I'm sure Elon wants to be the first to go, but
Exactly.
go for it, man.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah. So you said change is the hardest thing, right? And you
Yeah.
referenced some technologies, drones dropping the dragon eggs, and BurnBot laying down some line. What do you think are the necessary steps for change to move faster?
Well, I mean, if it's going to happen on the federal side, it truly has to, it almost takes Congress to approve a little bit, um, especially as these companies come in. I think the biggest thing is these companies trying to get in with, a firefighter, getting that ground person, and if we can kind of make it move from the bottom up, I feel like that's where the change happens the fastest. That's what I've seen, especially with the radio systems and some of this different things. And how do we do that, right? Because uh, on the federal side, we have so many rules, and a lot of the rules are there to keep people safe. That's truly what it's about. It's not trying to limit um, who can do business with the federal agencies and stuff, but it's like trying to make sure that they're safe. And of course, the federal government, at least on the civil service side, is we can't accept gifts. So anything that's more than $25 is unconstitutional. And so even someone coming out and saying they'll give us a demonstration and stuff is sometimes it falls into that area. Is that appropriate or isn't it? And so that's some of it is. So maybe if we can start changing some of the regulations, the federal regulations, that allow us to do procurement and get some of this. The Department of Defense, they have a different set of rules than the civil service agencies do. And so that's probably one of the biggest boundaries. I think if we can kind of keep going through that, but we do have some smart people, our grants and agreements people, our contracting officers and stuff. And so they all see if we can, we do a white paper and show the value of it. And of course, when you bring in safety, that is the one thing that truly makes things float to the top the fastest when it's about trying to be safe for people. Because no one wants, an employee to die under their watch type thing.
Right. Absolutely. Tell me about the difference between the DoD and the civil side.
Well, it's amazing. DoD is, I mean, if you look at the federal budget, they get, definitely over half of the federal budget, and it's been like that pretty much my entire career. I mean, I always said, if you had if the president was Republican, they would lean towards the defense side, and then if they were Democrat, they'd lean towards the land management side. But then we had 9/11 happen. And realistically, since 9/11, it's kind of changed a little bit. Of course, the Biden administration was probably where he went traditional with that. But even like when Barack Obama was in office, some of my biggest budget cuts happened during his era. And that's what brought me to California. I was working for the National Park Service, and his second term was a budget cut for the National Park Service in their fuels management program. And it said in 2 years my position wouldn't exist anymore, and so I started looking for new positions, and ended up in California. But that's traditionally how it kind of goes. Whether it's good or bad, I don't know. But that's just the ebb and flow of federal government.
Yeah.
But the other thing is we have a lot of, like, I ran Vandenberg Interagency Training Center, and it's actually hosted on Vandenberg Air Force Base. So some of it was it was a great location, great facilities, great base to be on. We were on the south side of it, so we were kind of away from the mainstay. But what I found was just the smallest little thing. If someone had a DOI 10 years ago, I couldn't get them on base to go to a training and some of that stuff. And so whether that's good or bad, I don't know. I mean, it just made it was another challenge. And so the military definitely have their own challenges. And then, the civil service side of it is, we're looked at a little bit differently, and that's fine. I definitely, like I said, my dad spent 24 years in the military. So I salute those that truly serve their country. And I don't need to be put in their group, but I do feel like I serve my country too,
You sure do.
in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you see that we're going to see more of an overlap, perhaps, between fire management and DoD objectives, in that, pyroterrorism is a very easy way to take out a lot of assets?
Yeah, I mean, it officially, Department of Defense joined the National Interagency Fire community, NIFC. They joined them as an official member 3 years ago. And so I definitely probably see, and now that I was actually kind of surprised, because the rumor always was, when the Federal Land Management Agency's a fire service would be made, that it would be under Homeland Security. So I was kind of surprised that they're going to keep it under Department of Interior, just because of, like you said, the counterterrorism, a little bit of, I know that was a threat, especially after, 2001 to 2005. That was always, is someone lighting these fires? Is this a terrorist act? That was always a thing that we had to kind of look at. Yeah, I see it probably being a merge there of some sort, especially probably the next, 3.5 years that we have. It seems like there's, right now, this current administration is, if we've never done it, it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. There's nothing that they're not willing to try.
Yeah, they do seem to be more willing to look at new things, look at new technologies, less entrenched in tradition and more focused on results.
Yeah, because I mean, it was just like this year. I know on the NIFC side, traditionally we'd wait until PL 4 or 5 to ask the military to send us some assistance. and then we'd start training them. This year we actually put NIFC did it for the first time. We actually trained people back when we were in, at the time we were PL2, so we trained up a whole regiment to make sure that if we hit PL4 and 5 and needed extra assistance, they were ready to go and can be deployed right away. And so, we do have some new stuff going on, and that took Congress, or took the president to approve, and his administration, which traditionally it's, we have to have an event to put those funds forward on.
And well, now the event was just, the impending fear of what's coming and getting ready for it.
Well, yeah, I mean, in Canada is, their fire season really hadn't went away, and so at the time, Canada was, they were calling for assistance and stuff, and then we're slowly kind of starting to build here in the eastern part of the state, or the country. They were catching all their fires, but I think that one that happened in New Jersey that ended up about 7,000 acres, and threatened a lot of structures and stuff. That one kind of scared everyone a little bit.
Yeah, I wonder how long Canada will be able to get away with maintaining such a small fire service.
Yeah,
and depending on other people to come in, to swell their ranks.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was NATO, right, the administration would be saying like, "Hey, if you guys aren't paying your share, we're not coming to protect it." And I wonder if we're going to see something similar like that, in fire. Like, hey, look, if you guys are only going to put 2,000 people on, don't expect us to send 10,000 people every time you have a fire.
Well, and what I learned having gone up there and actually fought fire a couple years ago, each province is kind of its own country a little bit, and they do things different. So what's happening in Alberta is definitely different than, British Columbia or some of these other ones. And their big emphasis, especially for firefighters, is they have a pretty good agreement with South Africa, and so that's their big annual workforce. Is they bring over crews from South Africa, and they'll do 90 days in country, and they'll just keep rotating them through. And those tribal members are from the South African tribes, they're getting paid a lot more money than what they would be at home, and so they're looking. I mean, it's an honor for them to be a member of that. But I agree with you. I mean, rely on the United States, Australia, and New Zealand, support Canada tremendously.
I'm not saying we're not happy to help.
Yeah,
that can't be your full economic plan.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. What are some of the other challenges that you see?
Well, I think, all the challenges, especially Western, and you can take California, is the environmental stuff. There's pros and cons on all the environmental stuff, but that is a challenge. You have the EPA. Now I think they're backing down a little bit, but they were wanting to start fining agencies for wildfire smoke and stuff, and I see some benefit of that, but when it's an emergency, when we're doing prescribed fire, there's things we need to be making sure we're taking advantage of. I know one of the things, if I knew the surrounding area that I would affect, well, we'd make sure we went to those residents and make sure that they know what we were looking at doing, and if anyone was truly affected, was on oxygen or needed something. I mean, I put someone up in a hotel that the government paid for them because they were on oxygen, and I wanted to make sure they were safe out of the area. And so, but some of the rules and everything, the rules are there because people have broke them. They've done bad things, and we're trying to do stuff. But at the same time, it can't be, it's not an all or nothing type thing. I mean, we got to have there's got to be some levelness on it, and people truly we got to go with what is the best. I guess science is best science. Is the way, and hopefully people understand that. Okay, we're trying to do the best we can for not only the public, but for the environment too. You know, at least on the federal side, that's truly. I look at myself as a wildland firefighter. I look at myself as a land management um, manager. I truly felt like we were trying to manage the lands for not only the public and the population, but for the animals that are out there in the wilderness and stuff. And you know, we were trying to do what was best for the environment.
So you've worked for at least 3 agencies,
Yeah.
and compiled a lot of experience, a lot of perspectives, and now you've come to the end of your civil service career, but you're not done serving America
No.
and serving the cause of wildfire resilience. What do you think is next for you?
Well, that's the one thing is, and that was one of advantage of why I became a federal wildland firefighter is, you know, we had our retirement was you had a minimum age you had to get into. Back then it used to be you had to get in permanently before 35, and then you had a maximum age. Now it's you have to retire at 57. So I looked at now that I'm 51 and I'll be 52 before the end of the year, is I'm still young enough to where I can go start a second career. And, you know, some of the stuff I've been looking at is, you know, Cal OES has a great program, and I don't want to be the firefighter out there on the ground anymore. I think I put in my time and everything, but training and mentoring and you know, and even some of the science side of it, you know, I went to, during the 2021 through 23, working full time, and I think I got almost 1,200 hours overtime those years on fires. I went to school full time and I got a cybersecurity degree, just because computers and that has always been, you know, something that's been close to me through my life. And so just trying to, you know, keep moving on. And so probably just like yourself, the reason why you kind of started doing some of the stuff you did is I want to try and leave something for the future, for the next generation, and something, you know, a building block for them to keep moving it forward and making this career and this job, you know, better for all.
Yeah, right. And do you have kids?
No, I don't have kids. I married my job, and that's
Okay.
luckily I've met someone here recently, and you know, and she's a little bit older too, but we don't have kids. But that's something we're talking about, maybe adopting or doing something
Oh,
like
interesting. Yeah, go for it.
that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, you because you were talking about leaving a legacy,
Yeah.
right? And I don't know. I think if I offered my kids the option, like we could leave you the legacy of, you know, there will be trees and there will be national parks and there'll be places for you to go. They say, what about just some money? Yeah.
Yes.
But we want, you know, hopefully both, right?
Yes. And luckily I do have some nieces and nephews, you know, and on my sister's side and then on my in-law side. So luckily, you know, there is some of that. But yeah, just the legacy of you know, just, you know, the future, and it could be someone that I've never even met or known.
Yeah.
Hopefully did something for them to where it's made their life easier doing the job. You know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I can see that, like one of the big technology upgrades that when I first started was the old collapsible weeping hose, and now we use synthetic hose, you know, and it's like what a lift that was, because you know a 50-foot roll of weeping hose when it was wet, you know, it weighed a ton, and
Yeah.
now, you know, rolling up a synthetic hose and hauling that out is, you know, just that technology there was great, you know, that people before me left for me. So, you know.
Right. So when you're talking to the rookies, you're just like, oh, you guys have it easy. You don't know how it was when I was a kid.
Exactly right. It always snowed, you know, walking to school was always uphill both ways.
Right. Exactly. That's funny. That's funny. What do you think could be done, you know, policy wise or what holes do you see in current policies that are missing opportunities for better mitigation?
Well, I think some of the policies is truly how the budget is done on the federal side. That's a law. Every budget that's passed by Congress and signed by the president is a law, and a lot of times those have very short durations on them, usually 5 years or less. And I think when we're looking at some of these big policy changes and things that um, truly make a difference, it it takes, it's not cheap to do anything anymore, right? And so if you know, it's just like what kind of has happened this year is they're going to implement this new agency become January. And I look at, well, okay, is the fleet going with it? Are the facilities, who's all maintaining those? Because right now those are owned by the different agencies themselves. Are they now moving those all into this new agency? Just things like that is, just changing uniforms and name tags is a feat and something that can't happen overnight. And so some of the policies that I think is, I don't want to make it to where it's like the judicial side of it, right? Once you're made a judge, you're a judge for life. I don't think that's the way, but maybe looking at stuff of, especially when it comes to the wildland side of it, is we got to be looking at stuff at a 20-year. To me, is the model 20 years. Anything short of that is basically we're just, we're not too excited about it. We're not too positive on it, and we're just trying to put a Band-Aid on it. A sucking chest wound almost is what we're trying to do, and to me that's, we're just wasting resources and funds and stuff by trying to do all these small little things. And I guess the other thing on policy is it always has a name tied to it, right? Of someone, I did this, and I think that's human nature. I guess we'll probably never get out of that. But if it wasn't so much about who did it, but why we're doing it, I
Yeah,
think that would improve policy so much better.
right. What do they say? There's no limit to what you can get done if you don't care who gets the credit.
Exactly. And it takes a team. It from top to bottom, it takes a team, and it's usually those worker bees, the boots on the ground. That's the people that are truly doing it. And I look at through my career, that's probably been the big difference, right? Is we had the policy change of no matter who you are on the crew, what your experience is, if you see something that doesn't look right to you, you speak up about it.
Yeah, that's key.
Instead of, we came from the military, so it used to be if you were first or second year firefighter, you didn't say anything. You put your head down and you dug. And that's truly what it was. And to where, like, even pulling out your old portable camera to take a snapshot was, taboo. Um, if you looked at a lot of the people that grew up in the 80s and 90s, their fire shots, um, it was usually not the best picture because they're trying to do it quickly before their boss sees see what's going on. So yeah, just some of that.
It's true, though. I mean, even now, right? When you look through, you're probably not going to see a lot of social media of hot shots, posing with their selfie with their shovel and the fire behind them.
Exactly.
They're busy working.
Yeah, they're busy working, but I think that's where some of the technology is really improved, right? Is I'm still trying to learn that, hey, this is not just a phone; it's a camera too, and doing, and where our future firefighters are 18 to 21-year-old.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's like they've really learned to multitask on getting the video and
yeah,
working at the same time. It's kind of interesting.
right. And you could tell them, hey, your camera has a phone built in.
Yeah, exactly right. You
Right?
can actually talk on it.
Yeah, right. That's the last thing they do, right? Texting and taking pictures. Oh well.
Yep. Yep.
But the change is going to happen, right? And
It is.
it's going to be the next generation, and how they feel comfortable doing things is how it's going to get done.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
And I know all the agencies, city, county, our biggest thing is because of technology and everyone wanting to be the next YouTube star, that's our biggest thing, I think, is now trying to recruit. We're starting to see recruitment is coming back around a little bit, but it's outside that box of, hey, you can still have a very successful life and career. And yeah, it's hard work and stuff, but there's a lot of fun stuff that comes with, doing our job. And I got paid to go to some places throughout the United States that a lot of people probably have never even know exist or even thought about going to. And so there's a lot of other benefits that's just not always monetary.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it's been a fascinating ride.
Yeah. No,
Well,
I have no regrets about what I've done throughout my career.
well, I have tremendous appreciation for the work you've done and the expertise that you've developed, and for your commitment in the future to taking the benefit of what you've learned and passing it on to the next generation.
Well, thanks, Steve. It really means a lot. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Dave Dukart, check him out on LinkedIn. This guy's, what a humble guy for the amount of experience and leadership that he's shown in various agencies. So thank you so much for your service, Dave. You've been listening to The Fire Break. I'm Steve Wolf. We're sponsored by Team Wildfire. Thanks for joining us. Until I see you next time, be careful. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.